Welcome to another podcast of the Riffle series. The Riffle, a podcast series brought to you by 10 Leaves. I'm really glad you're joining us today because, well, we've got a custom-tailored deep dive prepared for you.
Yeah, we're really getting into some fascinating and honestly pretty alarming territory today.
We absolutely are. So we're looking at this remarkably candid document. It's the 2026 Proliferation Financing National Risk Assessment.
Right, the one published by the UAE's Executive Office for Control and Non-Proliferation.
Exactly. And it essentially functions as like an X-ray of how illicit networks attempt to use global financial hubs. But okay, let's unpack this. Proliferation financing, or PF.
Yeah, let's make sure we define that first so you, the listener, have the baseline context.
Right. So proliferation financing is the illicit raising or moving of funds to manufacture, acquire, or export weapons of mass destruction, WMDs.
It's a heavy topic. We're talking nuclear, chemical, biological, and radiological weapons, and, the highly technical systems needed to deliver them.
Exactly. Now, the UAE is taking a really proactive, risk-based approach with this assessment. And the report rates the overall country risk for PF evasion as medium-high.
Which, and I think this is a vital point to clarify, that rating is not because the UAE is ignoring the rules or breaching sanctions.
Right.
The breach risk is actually minimal. The legal framework is very robust. The medium-high rating comes almost entirely from the evasion tactics themselves.
Because the people breaking the rules are they're operating at an unprecedented level of sophistication. We're talking about highly resourced, state-backed entities.
No, totally. And the UAE is a massive global financial, trade, and transshipment hub. It just naturally elevates the risk.
It's like, well, think of it like managing a massive international airport, like the busiest global transit hub on the planet.
Right, the sheer volume of traffic.
Yeah, the volume of everyday, legitimate traffic makes spotting one disguised bad actor incredibly difficult. They just blend into this massive crowd.
I actually love that airport analogy because in a normal airport, the metal detector scans your whole bag, right? You see everything inside.
Right.
But in trade finance and global shipping, we're essentially only allowed to scan the luggage tag.
Wow, just the paperwork.
Just the paperwork, unless, we have a specific intelligence-driven reason to physically open that container. Plus, the UAE is adjacent to Iran, a heavily sanctioned state.
So you combine that astronomical volume of trade, the proximity to a sanctioned state, and thousands of customs brokers processing shipments daily?
Yeah, the vulnerability is just structural at that point.
Okay, so that's the geography and the vulnerability. But here's where it gets really interesting. Let's look at the first major threat actor identified in the text, the Democratic People's Republic of Korea, the DPRK.
Right, North Korea, operating under UN Security Council Resolution 1718.
You picture rogue states acquiring weapons through, shadowy arms dealers in dark alleys. But the DPRK uses state-sponsored hackers, like the Lazarus Group.
Oh, absolutely. They operate less like a traditional intelligence agency and more like a state-sponsored digital cartel. And the stats in this 2026 assessment are just staggering.
What are the numbers?
Since 2017, DPRK cyber threat actors have stolen roughly $1.2 billion in virtual assets globally.
$1.2 billion.
Yeah, and the acceleration is what's really scary. About 630 million of that total was stolen in 2022 alone.
Oh my gosh, wait, but I have to push back on this. If they are stealing digital crypto, how does that actually translate into buying physical things like military gear?
That's the million-dollar question, the billion-dollar question.
Right, because you can't just send a defense contractor a Bitcoin wallet address and ask for a missile guidance system.
Exactly. They can't spend it directly, so they have to bridge that digital to physical gap. And the report details a specific case study about this.
Oh, let's hear it.
So an intermediary working for the DPRK used an unwitting UAE resident to convert stolen crypto into fiat currency. AED, or UAE dirhams.
How do they do that?
They used an over-the-counter service, an OTC, basically a broker who negotiates a direct trade outside of a public exchange.
Wait, but even if they use an OTC, a middleman still has to deposit massive amounts of cash, right? Or move it through a UAE bank to pay a manufacturer.
Right.
Doesn't depositing hundreds of thousands in cash trigger immediate anti-money laundering alarms?
It definitely would if they did it all at once, but they use a technique called structuring.
Breaking it down.
Exactly, breaking the large sum into many small deposits that fall just below the reporting thresholds, or they integrate it into legitimate cash-intensive businesses that they secretly control.
So the bank just sees daily revenue from a retail shop or something.
Right, not the liquidated assets of a cyber heist.
That is wild. And there's another case study in the report that I want to bring up because it shows how brazen they get once they have that clean fiat currency.
Oh, the armoring company case?
Yes. A DPRK intermediary approached a locally regulated armoring company directly in the UAE. They wanted to buy a high-end, military-grade vehicle.
And they lied completely about the final destination.
Completely lied. But when the authorities actually flagged the shipment and told the company the export was restricted, the intermediaries didn't just run away.
No, they didn't.
They tried to hastily change the beneficial ownership paperwork right then and there, just inventing a new buyer on the spot to make the problem go away.
It's a very desperate move, but it shows their reliance on bureaucratic manipulation. And, while they're doing all this high-tech cybercrime, they haven't abandoned analog methods either.
No, not at all.
The report explicitly outlines how DPRK diplomats are smuggling cash, gold, and disguising luxury goods shipments.
Right, the luxury goods that were supposedly for personal use by diplomatic staff in a third country. But when you follow the documents, they were meant for mid-sea ship-to-ship transfers back to North Korea.
Exactly. It's a multi-pronged approach. Hack the blockchain on one side, physically smuggle gold on the other.
Okay, so that's the DPRK playbook. Now let's pivot to the second major threat actor in the text, Iran.
Right, operating under UN Security Council resolutions 1737 and 2231.
The contrast here is just striking to me. North Korea runs these digital heists, but Iran operates more like, I don't know, a corrupt multinational corporation.
That's a perfect way to describe it. They exploit trade finance and bury everything in paperwork.
Yeah, the report notes they rely heavily on front companies, especially in the oil and petrochemical sectors. Third-party accounts, fraudulent customs documents, the whole corporate smokescreen.
And their primary target is procuring dual-use goods, DGs.
Right, let's explain DGs really quick. These are items that have legitimate civilian applications, but also highly restricted military applications, right?
Exactly. A great example is a gyroscope.
Okay.
A high-grade gyroscope that stabilizes a civilian maritime drone looks almost identical to the gyroscope that guides a ballistic missile.
Wow.
The only difference might be, like, a tiny variance in heat resistance, so tracking them requires immense technical precision.
And Iran exploits that difficulty with just absurd paper trails. I have to mention this case study from the text.
Go for it.
The company submitted a forged bill of lading for items used in the production of missiles and WMD systems. But the purported seller on the paperwork, a food products company.
Right, a bakery supplier shipping industrial missile parts.
It's absurd. But they mislabel the documents, hide the true origin, declare a low financial value. It's obfuscation through sheer bureaucratic volume.
They're just betting that some tired compliance officer will stamp it without asking why a food distributor is shipping industrial-grade titanium.
And sometimes it's way more subtle than that. There was that case with the electronic item where the deception was just purely mathematical.
Yes, the threshold manipulation. A UAE-based company submitted a permit request to export an electronic item to Iran.
And they tried to sneak it just under the wire, right?
Exactly. They submitted specs declaring the item was just slightly below the UAE control list threshold for dual-use goods.
Because if it's below the threshold, they can just use a general license.
Right, which has minimal friction. But if it's above the threshold, it triggers a massive interagency review process. So they lied to stay in the fast lane.
But an inspection caught them.
An actual physical inspection proved it was above the threshold, yes. But it highlights how granular this fight is. We're expecting shipping clerks to understand the heat tolerances of aerospace alloys.
Right, which brings us to the actual economy. With these sophisticated attacks from both the DPRK and Iran, which sectors actually bear the brunt of the risk?
Well, breaking it down, the sector carrying the highest risk in the mainland UAE is the virtual asset service providers, the VASPs.
High risk, because of the anonymity and speed of crypto.
Speed, cross-border reach, and the blockchain itself. Now, licensed VASPs in the UAE are strictly regulated. The vulnerability is when they interact with the broader, wilder crypto ecosystem.
Like unhosted wallet.
Unhosted private wallets or unlicensed offshore VASPs. The constant exposure to state-sponsored hackers like the Lazarus Group keeps that risk high.
Okay, so crypto is high risk. But what about everyday banking, traditional finance?
That's rated as medium-high risk. Banks face elevated risk because of trade finance products like letters of credit, where the bank guarantees payment purely based on shipping documents.
Which, as we've seen, can totally be forged. And the report points out open account wire transfers as a major structural vulnerability too.
Right. In an open account, the goods are shipped before payment is due. The buyer just wires the money later. The bank processing that SWIFT wire just sees an instruction. They don't see the underlying customs declarations.
They just see money moving from company A to company B for consulting fees,
Exactly.
which ties into another structural vulnerability, the commercial free zones, CFZs.
Right. The UAE is incredibly business friendly.
Yeah, these zones make setting up a company so fast and easy, but that ease of business makes it easier for bad actors to create front companies, right?
It creates complex ultimate beneficial owner structures, UBOs.
It's literally a corporate shell game. The cups are scattered across 5 international jurisdictions, and the ball is just a piece of paper hiding the real owner.
And if a bank processing a wire doesn't know who actually owns the front company, they might be facilitating a proliferation network.
Now, what surprised me was seeing dealers in precious metals and stones, the DPMS sector, facing a medium risk.
Well, gold is highly attractive for raising untraceable revenue. Once it's melted down and recast, it loses all serial numbers.
It's untraceable wealth storage.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got hackers, forged manifests, shell games, melted gold. It sounds overwhelming. But the UAE has specific defenses, right? Like actual mitigations.
Yes, absolutely. To fight the corporate shell game and increase transparency, the UAE implemented the National Economic Register, the NER.
How does the NER fix it?
It centralizes ownership information. It removes the jurisdictional arbitrage between different free zones, so compliance officers have a single source of truth for UBO data.
Stripping away the anonymity. I love that. And what about the physical goods?
For that, UAE Customs uses the PLI system, preloading advanced cargo information.
Okay, how does that work?
Before a single item is even loaded onto a plane anywhere in the world bound for the UAE, the carriers have to submit specific data elements to the authorities.
So they are assessing air cargo data for illicit items before they are even loaded, pushing the metal detector out before you even get to the airport.
Exactly. Advanced algorithms flag suspicious patterns like heavy industrial equipment going to a residential address before it ever enters the supply chain.
That is incredible. Okay, so if we connect this to the bigger picture, why should you, the listener, care about this? I mean, obviously stopping WMDs is universally good,
Yeah.
but for a normal business person,
If we connect this to the bigger picture, the core takeaway is that these compliance protocols, corporate transparency, KYC laws, supply chain tracking, they aren't just bureaucratic red tape.
they're the front lines.
They are the literal front lines of global security, preventing the spread of WMDs. The battle isn't just in hidden bunkers anymore. It's happening inside the global financial system every single day.
Wow, we have covered a massive amount of ground today.
And we really have.
From state-sponsored hackers in North Korea stealing billions in crypto, to Iranian networks surging bills of lading for industrial parts. We looked at how the speed of free trade zones can hide ultimate beneficial owners and how melted gold provides untraceable value.
And it all highlights that the battle against proliferation financing is happening right in the middle of our everyday global commerce.
The danger doesn't look like a threat anymore. It looks like a routine wire transfer or a line of code on a blockchain.
Which means the defense has to be just as sophisticated.
Absolutely. So I'll leave you with this. Next time you hear about a massive crypto hack in the news, or you see a giant cargo ship leaving a busy port, ask yourself, where is that value ultimately flowing? Could the anonymity of modern convenience be secretly funding the world's most dangerous weapons without anyone even knowing? Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive. Until next time, keep looking beneath the surface.